Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. I hope I delayed enough. Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna. Happy Monday. After an Easter weekend, if you celebrated, it was a beautiful weather weekend for us. I'm just checking in and seeing all the buddies here. We've been spending, our coffee time has grown so much, which is so wonderful, but we've been spending so much time with greetings in the morning. I'm only going to greet once in a while, and I'm going to trust that you know that I love you, and I'm very happy that you're there. So I can get to a little more commentary, but I'm going to stay on top of the greetings and check the conversation between you because it's always nice to know what you're talking about. We did have a great cocktail time on Friday night with Michelle Miccarelli. I hope you tuned into that. That was super fun. And then over the weekend, one of the things that I posted, and I know a lot of you saw it already, I was able to post a really, I think, a very, very good video, if I do say so myself, with my sister, who's an art restorer at Yale. We talk so often about paint and pigment, and sometimes we work on color schemes together, or she comes over for some drinks and she helps me work on a sort of colorway that I'm doing, like the weekend in Maine. We did that together. We chose the colors and worked on those together, and it's always fun to work on dyeing and color. But because she's a fine artist and not a fiber artist, she works very differently with pigment and color. And so this video, if you haven't seen it yet, is about, from a fine art point of view, about finding pigments historically. What people would have traditionally done in terms of crushing them, making them, and mixing them into some kind of a medium or a vehicle so you can paint with it. We do something very different with fiber arts. We have a completely different process, sometimes the same pigments, but that's what the video is about. So if you're interested in color, history, pigments, anything like that, it was a really fun video. I ended up putting together a bunch of patterns. This is one of the ones I'm working on that we had some orders of this one already. This great one that I call Tudor Pond, which was based on the dress that we were looking at. This is actually the size that I listed. It's you can always ask for it to be outsized, even bigger, or made smaller, like a punch needle size, like this kind of thing too. So I'm working on those now. At the end of the video, I tacked a bit on because I had done some dyeing with my chemical dyes. I didn't use natural dyes for this, to try to emulate the colors that she had shown us in the video. So that was a bit tricky, and it ended with lots of chicken scratchings in my notes, trying to get the colors just right. So those recipes are in that video too. It's a fun video. So it was just a busy weekend for news, for work, for everything. Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to see you all. I'm glad you enjoyed Friday. It was a very fun video. And on Thursday, remember, we went to Naomi's Ravensgate Primitives. We went to see her, and she gave us so much information on Thursday. If you saw that coffee time on her dye process, lots of tips, tricks, shortcuts from her. She's so good with sharing that kind of thing. Okay. Oh, good. It sounds like a lot of people watched both Friday Night Cocktail Night and that special that I did with my sister. So that is so nice. If you have ideas for specials that you'd like me to do, just let me know. I have a long list, but I'm always looking for more ideas, and I won't necessarily put them at the end. If it's something that makes sense to work on now, I love to brainstorm with you and come up with some ideas for subjects for videos. So that came out this weekend. Before I forget, I just want to remind the people who are in southern New England or love to travel that on National Punch Needle Day, which I think is Saturday, April 10th, there is an event planned at the Clock Museum in Bristol, Connecticut. We are doing social distancing. We are being super, super sensible. And we are following the CDC guidelines, of course, as the Clock Museum does itself. The event is planned for outside. It is possible to do it inside and still be very safe and spaced out. I just want you to be aware that that event is happening, and if you can make it to Bristol, Connecticut on National Punch Needle Day, if you can't find that information on our Facebook page, which is Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club, ask me for it on ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com, or here or anywhere, and I can forward it to you if you're interested in coming. And I have to post later in that day, I will be doing a live Zoom for everybody who isn't in southern Connecticut, who would like to get together and chat on National Punch Needle Day and celebrate that way. We'll do that together more toward the evening Eastern Standard Time. So I will post that later in the day. I kind of forgot about it for the moment. Oh, thank you so much, Ralda. This is part of a 2-set I got from Facebook Marketplace, which was one of my big things. Everything's so cheap on there, and I keep buying stuff. Crazy, right? Yes, Liz. Okay, so look for Liz's post. I posted on it as a reminder, but we both posted in the Facebook group, Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club. Please like, subscribe, comment on this video. This has been a big subject lately because videos are getting great amounts of views, but not a lot of likes. Your comments are fantastic. And subscribes. So that event is coming up. We just talked about what videos just happened. I worked a little bit over Easter weekend on the Mr. Tiffany's. This is the April block, and I am late. But you can see I got quite a bit farther. I finished hooking the flowers. I hooked almost all of the border, but I forgot my black when I went to my mom's for the weekend. So I didn't have the antique black for between the mosaic pieces. So down here you can see I need to fill in the black. But it also gave me the idea, kind of like the way that looks too. If you see these bits around the corner that don't have the grout in it, that looks kind of pretty too, as opposed to that. So if you get this pattern, you hook it however you like it. That's the main thing. I was working on the flowers, the Easter lily in the middle and the two daffies, and I worked on the saucer, and I just used colors that I had in here, and I'm about to cut threes to work on the cup today, so I can show that to you finished. But this pattern is going to be called Mr. Tiffany's Bouquet. As in Tiffany glass, because it kind of looks like one of these stained glass or cut glass chandeliers with a small springtime bouquet in the middle. So that is coming out in the next couple of days. Hey, Tad. As is, and Tad, I still want to do something with you. That's my next thing to say. That as well as I'm going to put up the Magdalena class. And for those of you who haven't heard this yet, I am going to start doing a class once a month. It's a design composition class for absolute beginners. No pressure, no output expected. There'll be 2-hour classes, and I think I'm going to put them at like $45, so like I think quite reasonable. And each month I'm going to choose a different person to say, design in the style of, and the first month it's going to be Magdalena Ebby Briner Ebby from Pennsylvania, who does the beautiful sort of folky, naive. We've talked about her quite a bit on Coffee Time. More on that. I started one of her patterns with very unexpected colors, and then this weekend I couldn't help myself. I had to sit for a while and work on one of Susan Barnard's patterns because I bought 2 of her Magdalena style rugs, signature lollipop tree. But in the background, unlike my other one I'm working on, I've just been outlining. I'm using this fabric, which is a crazy black and pink plaid. So the point of that class, as the whole series will be, is to focus once a month on an artist. Well, usually a rug hooking artist, but not always. Sometimes a fine artist or like a pop artist. But it'll be a little bit biographical, a little bit of historical context about why she hooked the way she hooked, why she handled subjects the way she did, why she designed the way she did, sort of theory, that kind of talk, atmospheric stuff, building up to the possible act of actually putting some compositions together. And the class will come with a PDF with tons of stencils that you can use because they'll be my stencil drawings. You can use however you want to put together compositions that are Magdalena style compositions for yourself to keep for hooking, and they will be your own patterns. So, that you can use freely. She is out of copyright because of the age of her work. But beyond that, the stencils that I'm giving you are for you to work with and for you to make patterns. So all of these classes will work like that. A little bit of context, a little bit of history, a lot of atmosphere, and then giving you the tools to be able to sit down at a blank piece of paper or directly onto your backing fabric with a Sharpie, tracing stuff, just putting stuff together, and having the confidence to do it after a class like this. Having the confidence, that's the main thing. One other thing I want to say before I go into commentary, I want to return to that Stella Hay Rex book. Dave said, I didn't see you on today, Dave, but I bet you're watching, or I bet you'll watch later. Dave said during Zoom last week, he said, it'd be fun to do a video because I have so many things that I like my favorite things and tools that I use. And I thought about that all week. And I thought about it after I went and did the field trip with Naomi and the field trip with Michelle on Thursday and then Friday, respectively. And I thought about it over the weekend. And the more I think about it, the more I think it's important to sort of start this getting together with people in the group thing. Whether you have a rug hooking business or not, whether you sell stuff or not, there are so many people out there who are associated with Coffee Times and with the Facebook page who are so prolific, so fantastic, well-known or not, beginners who are fantastic in getting some great traction going. Everybody has something to show. So I'm hoping that in the near future, people will start being in touch with me again, ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com, and letting me know if you would be interested in doing a Zoom video like the one I did with my sister last week, where we talk on Zoom. Whether you think you have worthwhile stuff to show or not, you do. And we would like to see it. And I would like to ask you questions about your process and your interests and your favorite backing fabric and your favorite tips and what you figured out. Even if you're a beginner, when you're so close to the beginning, just like a child, you always, when you look at babies and things, you wonder, they're so close to the mysteries of the universe that we'll never be able to solve as human beings. They're so close to the beginning. What do they know? What do they remember? It's the same thing beginning any craft. You remember things that the rest of us sweep under the carpet because we've been at it a little bit longer. Whether you are a beginner or you're super advanced, I would love to, if you would love to, look at some of the stuff you've hooked, commercial patterns, original patterns, and talk about your work in a Zoom video so we can get to know each other better that way. We can figure out where everybody's from, not required, of course. It's only if you want to. And I won't ask you anything horrible or put you on the spot. And I can edit the video after if you felt that you've said something that you wished you hadn't. All of that is possible. But I think it would be really good to start highlighting not just people who are very well known and have businesses, but everybody who's in the group that would like to show something and say something. I would like that just as much, if not better. So let's see. You sent me an email about this kit. Yep, Ralda, maybe doing an idea for Van Gogh's Cypress Yellow House. Yep, I could definitely do some stuff with Van Gogh ideas. Van Gogh is also out of copyright. He has been dead for 100 years. That is the thing for us in the U.S. I think it's changed to 50 years now. And I believe in Canada it's still 75. How far from Bristol is Mass? You live close to the Mass Pike. Patricia, it's not far at all. You would come shooting through Springfield, and Bristol is way up, sort of in the middle, a little bit east. So it's not far at all from the Mass Pike. If you're coming from Springfield, you're looking at, like, I would say 20 minutes at that point, getting off the Mass Pike and starting to do the back roads. You come right through Springfield into Connecticut, and it's one of the northern towns. So that would be real close. But so let's go back a little bit to, I'm going to keep an eye on the comments. I felt bad I was missing comments on Friday, so I want to be attentive to the comments. But let's look at this again. We were looking at, oh no, one more thing. Actually, two more things. It's catch-up weekend time, isn't it? I was so excited on Friday because I got a package in the mail, and I didn't know what it was. I mean, I order lots of stuff, right, all the time. But it was a book, and I hadn't ordered a book that I was waiting for, and I wondered, how did you miss the Zoom? Oh, no, it wasn't a Zoom, Sheila. I recorded it. So it wasn't something that I had live. She created like a PowerPoint kind of a slideshow of close-ups, and she used all kinds of technology they have at Yale to look at pigments, like under very advanced machines. She pre-recorded it, and then the two of us Zoomed and recorded the Zoom so that I could ask her questions about what she was seeing. She was showing us like where different content of pigments show up in the painting. I was asking her real specific questions that also crossed over to textiles, so that we could really get some clarity on the difference between textile pigments and fine art pigments, so fiber versus fine art. But it wasn't a live thing, it was a pre-recorded thing, just because we didn't want to screw it up too bad. We did okay in the end. But I got this package in the mail, and I can't tell you how excited I was. Judy, if you're watching, I owe you an email, and thank you so much. Judy Taylor, who we talk about a lot on the show, and the reason we talk about her a lot is because she's extraordinary, and she's written so many books, the T-shirt book, the Save That Rug book, the hook, lots of hook, at least 2 or 3 hooking with yarn. She is so amazing, talented, smart, funny, personable, and her books are tippity toppermost poppermost. So she sent me the newest book, and I wasn't even aware that it was out. Shame on me. She sent me this amazing book called Breaking the Boundaries, The Rug Hooking Artistry of Sharon Johnston. And we're going to look at this book tomorrow. It's a giant book. Look at the size of this. It's all full color. It's a giant book. I was so happy to get it. I can't tell you. I was so happy to get it. I was so excited and grateful. So I want to let you know that this is available. We'll talk about it tomorrow, but I'll put the link to her actual website. I think Little House Rugs, right? Little House Rugs. Let me just be sure in case you want to order it in advance because you know it's going to be good. But it's good to order it, I think, directly from her website, because I think when you order it on Amazon, they're always going to have some kind of a crazy markup. Let me see, rug hooking. Yeah, she's one of the admins of Rug Hooking Daily, too. We should talk about that more because it's fantastic. Littlehouserugs.com, simple as that. So I'm going to be starting looking at this book tomorrow. That was just an amazing thing to find in the mail. One other thing. Hey, Heather. No, Sheila, you didn't miss anything. I also I started working on some Jacobian patterns to put these punch needle kits together because, of course, I have the less expensive punch needles that are great for beginners or great for someone that just wants something different. With the little washers that each needle you can change the height on it without buying multiples. So it's a great sort of beginner type needle. Or, I mean, I use it a lot. So those are available, but I also received the other parts to the kit. The hoops that I ordered, like the non-slip hoops, again, this is going to be a beginner kit that I'm doing for punch needle. So in putting that together, I started to sketch some designs that I thought were sort of Jacobian. Remember the Pearl McGowan Jacobian series, like in the 1950s, 1960s that we've talked about? Those kinds of designs that are recognizable, oversized flowers and leaves and petals and stems and all that kind of thing. I was sketching some of those, and the more that I sketched oversized flowers and oversized leaves, the more I realized that at least maybe I was drinking. The more that I realized that when you put oversized stuff into a composition, you're getting right to the edge of Dr. Seuss, what his look looked like. So just for a joke, I drew a Jacobian tree with two little sheep under it, and then I sort of Saturned out or ringed out the little hill, because Dr. Seuss did that a lot. He did like straight lines in landscapes, just like weird patchwork straight lines, almost like Dutch tulip fields. And I took away the berries that I had drawn, and I drew these puff things that he uses in a lot of his illustrations. And I thought, man, it's remarkable how much Jacobian design, because these leaves are very traditional. The shape of the vines, the twisting vines, and all these crazy curling leaves, very, very Jacobian, very traditional, historic Jacobian. And I thought, it also looks very Dr. Seuss. So I threw some Dr. Seuss style, Dr. Seuss-esque type stuff in there. When you do stuff like this, you have to obviously draw it yourself. You can't peel it right off of his page. But, hey, Wendy. And then I went crazy and did this one. A different one with the archway. He always did these archway. He usually piled like cities on top of them. I didn't do that because it got too busy, but I drew a fracture angel in the center of my sheet, and then I thought I need an archway like going into the gates of heaven or something, and I thought I'm going to do a Dr. Seuss archway, and then I did his crazy balloons up in top, right, like, oh, the places you go. And then I thought Gabriel's blowing, like, oh, the places you blow, but I didn't name it that because it seemed like it was maybe a bit on the edge of being raunchy sounding. But I was just fooling around with these classic sort of design motifs and adding a bit, right, Sheila? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. All these kinds of Jacobian and fracture images, or fractures too, are classic for having outsized, oversized elements to them. Which is one of the devices that Dr. Seuss, maybe at some point we should do a month like designing in the style of Dr. Seuss. He used the same kinds of motifs, like those puffy sort of balls on things. Often he used the patchwork ground often, he used the spiral ground often, he used his stacked cities often, very often. He just stacked them differently in different books, but he certainly used the same design motifs again and again and again. And if you do something similar, and not exact, because then you can get yourself in trouble if you put it online or you try to sell a commercial design that's too close. But if you do your own drawing with similar motifs, it's kind of fun. There was a lot of wiggle room and crossover there, and once I tapped into that vein, it was very hard to come out. So I have those two designs that I'm going to be putting up. And if I think of more Dr. Seuss-esque in the style of stuff, I might fool around with it in the future because I can really see hooking or punching both of these in the near future. They're super, super happy, and I could definitely use that. Some funny designs coming out. So interesting, right? Something different. So in complete contrast to that idea of combining Jacobian landscapes with Dr. Seuss, we were looking at this great book by Stella Hay Rex, and we were talking about how these vintage books really force you, in terms of text, to rethink a lot of ideas that you have cemented that maybe are more movable than you think. 1953, this book is. So when we think about designing and approaching a project, we often think about finding a store, finding a place to buy our next pattern. Books like this from this era, people weren't routinely buying commercial patterns. There weren't always places that you could immediately find commercial patterns, so you would figure it out yourself, right? This isn't like pioneer days, but people in remote areas are still going to be fooling around with moving postcards, Pearl McGowan style, and doing geometrics that you can hand draw onto your backing. There's no reason why you can't revisit this now in 2021. These are great, solid composition design, original designing ideas that don't take a creative mind. They just take a little bit of know-how how to approach the project. So when we left off, we were talking about just design in general and ideas of where to pull designs from if you are thinking about designing an original piece for yourself. I'm going to take the dust jacket off because it's super fragile. So she talks about geometrics and quilt patterns. Now, these two things often go together. Taking curves aside, quilt patterns are typically very geometric. If you're a quilter, you probably don't love curves. You don't love maybe a compass design either with really fine points, but there's a lot in between. So she starts in this chapter, and this is something to think about. Just think about it. Just think about it as I describe these things. Keep an open mind and think blank canvas, piece of backing, or a big piece of paper in front of you. Just think about the possibilities. She starts by saying, what is meant by hit or miss? In other words, what does that mean? Oh, Barb, I held up this book that I'm doing tomorrow by Judy Taylor. It's called Breaking the Boundaries. It's on littlehouserugs.com. And again, it's by Judy Taylor. She just sent this to me. This is her newest book. Real pretty. So I'm not even going to crack it open today. This is going to be what we look at tomorrow. We'll do that tomorrow and Thursday. I have cracked it open. It's amazing. I'm giving you a preview because I know some of you will routinely buy the books that come out that are highly recommended. And when you see a name like Judy Taylor, you know it's going to be a great book, and you know it's not going to be a mistake that you got it. It's going to be a great source of inspiration forever. So what is their hit or miss? Now, if you're a beginner, you probably haven't heard this phrase yet. If you've been at it for a while, you have. Now, we have talked about how historically hooked rugs, geometrics, hit or miss patterns were not really meant for the front room, the rooms where visitors would come. They were more like kitchen, hallway, back entry kinds of rugs that were more utilitarian. Fancy designs, pictorial designs, were for better spaces, for spaces that more eyes would see. So she's talking about them even in the 1950s as something that you probably wouldn't want to put on display somewhere very visible. Of course, that is up to you in 2021. So she talks about when you approach a hit or miss pattern, hit or miss just means, you're going to use your scraps and there isn't a design. It's going to be a geometric design of sorts. And, you're going to do some darks, some lights. You need to first separate your darks from your lights. And it would be really helpful to put your mediums off to the side too. But once you separate them, you're just kind of going to grab your noodles or your strips as you go and hook. And it will either be a hit, which will be fantastic, or it'll be a miss. And if it's a miss, I bet it's still absolutely beautiful and it will certainly be utilitarian. It can be more or less of a hit, though. And she's saying the simplest form of a hit or miss is obviously a straight line going across the carpet. So whether you go top to bottom, diagonal, Naomi had a sort of checkerboard hit or miss that was diagonal that we looked at on Thursday on our field trip. Any of these things, but just the straight lines. Oh, I'm so sorry, Jennifer. I'm so sorry, Barb. I'm looking right now at Choice Hooked Rugs. This is a vintage book. I just took the dust jacket off. Choice Hooked Rugs, Stella Hay Rex. So this will be on Abe Books, eBay, probably Amazon. And it really is a wonderful book to, again, 1950s perspective, to talk about getting into it, to talk about design. She doesn't really talk about the mechanics of it or show photos of a person hooking a rug. She's talking about it in theory, and it's a very inspirational book considering its age, because she goes by genre and talks about the different kinds of subjects that you could hook, and that really is the thrust of this book. So in this chapter, she's talking about geometrics and how easy it is to approach a geometric, particularly if you're a beginner. It's easy to just rip up some stuff that you have, whether it's wool or t-shirt material or whatever, and just start hooking geometrically. Just get going with your technique, with holding the hook. You can make such beautiful hit or miss type things. And she says, keep it simple. Keep it simple with hit or miss patterns. Don't get too elaborate. We'll come back to that. And then she sort of builds on what she's saying by saying there is such a thing as a modified geometric. Now, a modified geometric would be like a block design that, picture this like a checkerboard, right? All different squares. In every other square, there is a hit or miss, just strippy strips going diagonal or whatever direction. And then in the boxes where there aren't hit or miss scraps, you have a picture, like leaves, a leaf, a maple leaf, a rosebud, a little picture. Sometimes different things like an animal, your different pets, things from around the house. You often see that too. So she's saying a modified geometric is when you use partial geometric and the rest of it is pictures and things that are important to you, years, initials, anything like that. She says a flower can be flat, conventionalized blossoms. And she says, think about using things from quilts, motifs from quilts, right? Because there are so many. Rose of Sharon, she says, there's, any sort of floral that you associate with quilting. And then, of course, geometrics like the log cabin and the courthouse steps and all those. But she's saying, if you're a quilter already, you probably have quilt books, or you can certainly go online and look at patterns. You can pull out flowers, you can pull out simple designs that quilters use for their quilt blocks, and you can put them in every other block and then hit or miss the others. And you've got a modified geometric, very easy to approach. She also talks about a type of rug that I have never heard of before. Maybe you have. I think this is really interesting. You're welcome, Barb. She talks about inch rugs. I loved the sound of that. Inch rug. So an inch pattern is an individualistic shading of tiny squares. It's an old type of rug, not made as often today in the 1950s as it once was because of the tedious amounts of measuring. So basically, I'm paraphrasing, it says it was known in Nova Scotia as an inch rug, but this pattern is also called in the US commonly Boston sidewalks or Vermont pavement or sidewalks of New York. So depending on your sort of locality, your geography, it can be named a different thing. But she's saying to make an inch rug, what you would do is get your backing fabric and you score it into 1-inch squares, right? So it's tedious, but it's only tedious for the 15 minutes that you're doing that. She says it's quite intricate, but then you are attacking this kind of composition that is comprised of all these tiny squares, like, going anything from like a postage stamp to a much larger square according to your vision. It almost becomes like a mosaic thing, right? But then you're hooking the entire composition hit or miss, or doing each square a different color, also possible. But in terms of putting the composition together, it will certainly be a scrap quilt. But if you keep them in inches, you will make an official inch rug, which by the 1950s was almost extinct. I think that's an interesting thought in itself. Even doing a small little inch rug for like a little mouse mat or a mug rug or something like that could be really cute. Just another idea, right? She talks more about quilt designs, and she talks a lot about using crazy quilt designs, or at least a crazy quilt composition, as a hooked rug design. And I know you've seen it. Unless you're brand new to hooking, you've seen people doing this. They're using the idea of a crazy quilt, which means there's very irregular, uneven, some sharp, some long, some short, very erratic patterns in a crazy quilt with lots of different stitching, decorative stitching around each piece, right, in a traditional quilt. Now with rug hooking, you don't have to do that if you don't want. You can do borders, no borders, faux stitching, not at all. But one of the signature things about a crazy quilt, of course, is that some of the blocks, the pieces, right, they're not square blocks, they're just pieces, don't have any pictures on them, or just patterned like solid or plaid or polka dot or whatever. stripes, and then others do have a picture on them. So if you were to put together a crazy quilt composition as a hook rug design on your larger pieces that you didn't break up too much, you could put your favorite pet or the year or your initials or your kids or your grandkids' initials or their faces, depending on how confident you feel about approaching something like this. But what a great, simple thing to do. Just sit down, get a Sharpie out, just do it, right? You can always change it as you go, but just put down some pieces and break them up as you go, break them up more and more, and make sure you leave yourself with a few large pieces so that if you wanted to, you could go back and hook in a little house, maybe your house, maybe your childhood house. Lots of thoughts, lots of ideas, but that's a great idea for just getting a composition going from scratch. You don't have a commercial pattern, you feel like doing something right now, you have a piece of backing fabric and a Sharpie, why not, right? So she talks about other quilting patterns, and she talks about this is just generally interesting sort of history, sentimental and biblical origin names for quilt blocks like Star of Bethlehem, Tree of Life. She talks about how useful these are for putting together hooked rug designs and how they have been used as hooked rug designs since hooked rugs. So she's saying the Rose of Shannon quilt came in with the advent of the applique quilt patterns in about 1750, so certainly predates any known hooked rugs that we've seen. Applique baskets of fruits, fruits and flowers and things. I know you've seen these as hooked rug designs. Very easy and very easy to draw, and also taken from quilts, right? Quilt patterns. Let me show you some of the designs that she's talking about. For example, here, this is one that would be like a modified, right? She's got a fan pattern in two opposites, and then she's got little flowers in the others. Now, this would actually be easier to hook than to quilt, in my opinion. The fan designs can be tricky, and then that's a pretty busy applique with the flowers. Imagine how much easier that would be to hook. This is an example of a modified hit or miss, because in every other block, she's got just the straight lines made from scraps, and then in the others, she's got a design. This one too, right? This is a little bit more advanced. She's got the stars in the first one, but in this one, she's got hit or miss background. She's got flowers in every other, and then in every other, she's got a kind of 9-patch quilt design. Really easy. And here's the Rose of Shannon that she keeps talking about. She loves this as a quilt pattern. Wish there were some hooking activities near Rochester, New York. Christine, you know, anybody that's near Rochester can please give a shout out or write on the Facebook page. I'm in New York. It'd be great to do that stuff. I was talking about maybe going up to the Finger Lakes this year. I would love to plan some outings, and I don't mind organizing them as long as I can get there within like a 4-hour radius. I would love to plan some stuff so that we can get together in person now that things are getting somewhat resolved in some areas, particularly remoter areas. But yeah, please give a shout out if you know anybody who's in the Rochester area. It's great if we can find each other. So I'll pick this up again in the future because after this chapter on geometric, she moves into color. She's already done design, and then she moves into themes. And it really is, it's such a good book for a book this age. It's such a good book about ideas. She's giving you so many ideas on every page. Compositions, you know, just pulling out a scrap of paper and just working on a very simple composition. No matter how naive it looks, it's going to look right for rug hooking, isn't it? I mean, that's the whole point, is that it's folk art. So she's giving you so many ideas in one book. It's just amazing. And speaking of great books, I'll remind you that tomorrow we are moving Rochester. Oh, good. Debbie, that's great. We are moving to the Judy Taylor book, Breaking the Boundaries. And we'll come back to the Stella book because it's fantastic and the different themes that she uses. I have to almost apologize for my hair. Do you ever stand in front of the mirror while the shower's running, kind of stalling because you don't feel like getting wet, and take out a pair of, for example, children's scissors that they also use when they do glue and glitter projects, and just cut half of your hair off absent-mindedly, you know, because you're half asleep? Well, I do it once in a while, and I did it this morning, so it is what it is. I'll try to fluff myself out better for tomorrow for the Judy Taylor book. In any case, have a great day, everybody. I'm so glad to see all of you. I wanted to get a bit of content in there, right, with ideas. Please let Liz know or me know if you're going to go to the event at the Clock Museum in Bristol. for National Punch Needle Day, and I will post an event for all of us to Zoom later in the day that day, more toward the evening Eastern Standard Time. We can be together on Zoom and celebrate that way. So in the meantime, have a great day. I hope you had a wonderful weekend, and we'll see each other tomorrow for this great book. Until then, have a great day. Please like and subscribe, Ribbon Candy Hooking Channel.